And now, coming to you live from Huntsville Attic Studios, it's Pop Culture Philosophers. And here are your hosts, Rockin, Robbie, Billups, and John Hammertime Holshoe.
Hey everybody, it's the Pop Culture Philosophers coming to you live from the Huntsville Attic in beautiful Huntsville, Alabama. Tonight we're going to be talking about 80s comedies. Everything from, I guess, Airplane to Stripes to, I don't know what starts with a Z. I don't have a comedy. But we're talking about 80s comedies and some of the influential directors and actors from the 80s. Of course, I'm John Hammertime Holshoe. With me always, Rockin' Robbie Billups.
Hey everybody, how you doing? John?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, how are you guys? How are the listeners doing? Wow, that's nice to hear. So, yeah, 80s comedies. Very excited to be back again here in Huntsville Attic. John, always with you here on Pop Culture Philosophers.
Of course.
Yes, 80s comedies. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
on this
being
show.
On the show where you're the co-host.
Thank you. Yes, right. Okay, with us tonight, we have some very, very special guests. They were with us on our very fourth episode, a fantastic fourth episode, if you will. We got the guys from Killing Time, the radio drama, radio comedy series. Killing Time.
Comma?
We got Richard Werder.
Hey.
Richard Werder here
right.
with us. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, sir.
We also have Alex the Humphrey.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, welcome back, gentlemen. It's been a while.
Yeah, welcome back. We did a whole episode called Killing Time about our favorite ways to kill time.
A long time ago, and you haven't had us on since, so...
yeah.
Oh, dear.
I guess it didn't go that well.
No, it went stupendously well, and we just have a... I guess we get. I don't. John, I don't want to be the guys to be like, we're just a little busy.
I remember
but we
before
get
the studio moved, you said, I'm going to move the studio so those guys from Killing Time can't find us. I remember you saying that. Yeah. I thought it was a weird thing to say, but...
You guys are busy because you're successful.
That's right.
Man. Nothing wrong with that.
Man.
I have
a good problem to have.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
so much time.
Let's talk about Killing Time real quick. Richard, what is Killing Time? Why should people care?
Well, why should people... Well, they shouldn't care. As a matter of fact.
Okay.
I don't care.
You're really selling the show.
Oh yeah, it's a podcast now. We have a new cast member and co-writer named Tina Leach. We've sort of changed the format of the show now. It's in addition to being set in the comic shop, it's we've expanded the world. It's there's a radio station now. We're doing sort of podcast thing. The live action thing wasn't working out as well as we thought it would. It takes too long to do a show. So now we've gone the whole podcast route. We got about 3 episodes in. We've really amped up the surrealness and the weirdness of it. And you can find us at killingtimeseries.podbean or something. We're also on iTunes if you want to check us out.
That's right.
Yeah, and we'll throw a link down below in the description.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Alex, what about you, man? Why do you think Killing Time matters? And how excited are you about the new format?
Delightful, funny. It's because we get along so well. The chemistry's there, so I think a lot of people will enjoy that. We got a lot of surreal moments in it, and I'd like to say that we might go back, make it shorter, maybe make the live action, maybe do some shorter sketches or something like that. We still got a lot.
Very special episodes.
Yeah.
Like where Alex learns to read. We'll
That's
have one that'll be live.
The live action, the videos were amazing and hilarious.
I
think their only problem was the 2-hour format of the videos. That was the only problem with the show.
If we made them shorter.
Well, I wanted to do basically the Roots version of comedy, but it didn't work out too well.
It's just like Roots, but set in a comic shop.
Yes.
That could work.
Much less slavery.
God, I would hope so. Of course, I've never worked in a comic shop, so... okay, so we're talking about 80s comedies, like I said. That's what we're here for. And we had you guys picked out in particular. He said we should have these fine gentlemen on the show. They're big fans of 80s comedies. I think we all are.
Thank you.
So why 80s comedies? Why did you want to be on the show for 80s comedies? Start with you.
Because Robbie asked me, and I wasn't really doing anything. So I said, sure,
That's a good
I'll be
answer.
happy to. Listen, we could have talked about, the Holocaust, and I would have showed up. I would have been more than happy to show up.
But you love 80s comedies,
I love 80s comedies because I was born in 1971, and I'm approximately 95 years old. I grew up in the 80s with all those 80s comedies that you would catch on HBO and USA Up All Night.
So it's influenced you a lot then.
Oh, yes.
Your humor style.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, which tends to sometimes be a little vulgar, just like the comedies of the 80s. A little inappropriate, but those were the 80s comedies. Look at them, for God's sakes.
Oh, yeah. Well, you, Alex, what Why 80s comedies?
Now that you mention it, yeah, there's just amazing,
extremely inappropriate.
Yeah, the language and the characters and the off-color banter between different characters,
the
and
casual racism and the casual
the way women were
misogyny.
treated.
Yeah, it's awful, but it's.
But I think because I have the perspective, I'm 41 right now, and because I have the perspective I do now, I can watch that with different eyes than I did when I was a kid. Because as a kid, it's like, oh, this is great. Can you believe what he said? And I kind of like the world. I like the world. We were anti-Russian back then. We were
very much so.
Everybody was.
Yeah, you remember that when we were. Remember that when
Cold
Russians were the
War.
bad guys.
Very different world from the one
Rocky
we live in
IV,
right now.
Red Dawn.
That's right.
Exactly. We were all about being the best and the toughest and the fastest and all this. And it was like, yeah, American pride. And I love the world that the movies create for themselves. I like that. It just seemed very imaginative back then. The ones I've chosen, I like the texture and the way these characters relate to each other back then. It's way different than it is right now.
Well, you, Robbie, I think you're the one that came up with the idea of like, hey, let's do an 80s comedy.
Probably regretting it.
I mean, we all came up with those ideas together, John. I mean, that's like one of the things that, like Richard said, that's when I grew up, man. I was born in 81.
Okay.
So I'm about 85 years old. And, I grew up during that stuff. And at the time, you were watching these movies, like home video was new.
Oh, my God.
So that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Going to the video store, watching HBO
Yep.
was a big deal, especially when they had the free week preview,
Oh,
which was a big deal. And
Yeah, that's the only time we ever got HBO.
oh, yeah, no
free
kidding,
week.
right?
And you had
so-
one HBO channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
But they
on
were also
HBO.
being able to deal with because effects were becoming like more and more prevalent in
Yeah.
film because of things like Star Wars and Blade Runner and The Thing and E.T. and all that stuff. Like you were able to tell these more fantastic type stories, and that evolved into the 80s comedy. So you had Teen Wolf, you had Back to the Future, you had these comedies, these fun Ghostbusters.
That's
You
right.
know?
The imagination.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to a lot of those tonight. And I think they also just had some of the absolute best comedic actors of the time. Now, we had great movies back in the day. Some Like It Hot. Super, super funny. Stalag 17. Anything by Billy Wilder is one of my favorite comedies back in the day. But it became all the Jerry Lewis stuff. And it just became all that for a while. And in the 70s, I think film grew up. And in the 80s, the comedies really started tackling real issues. With just a little bit more nuance in their scripts, and great comedic actors that had range, and the scripts had range. So the stories had a lot of range, and I love stuff like that. What about you, John?
I think similar thing you said. It was definitely. I remember in the 80s, my uncle buying a better VHS player, so we got his hand-me-down.
Ooh.
He still sold it to us for like $200.
It was a top loader.
It was a top loader.
top loader.
We had a top loader.
Yeah, so it was a big deal to have this, so we could go to the store and rent videos. And so all these 80s movies, even in the early 90s, we're still renting VHSs from movies in the 80s.
How great was it going?
A big
Friday
influence
night?
on me.
I love the
Friday
ritual.
night,
Yeah.
you go and you'd walk the aisle, and your parents would let you pick one. So you had to find the one movie you wanted to watch, and then you had to run it by them to make sure that it was okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My parents would we'll watch it with you, but we got to tell you when you cover your eyes, you have to cover your eyes.
Yep. I watched Porky's with my parents on HBO. I must have been about 11 or 12, and they would go, "All right, cover your eyes."
I watched 5 minutes of Golden Child with my dad and my mom. Eddie Murphy. We stopped.
I don't remember Golden Child be that bad. It's a thing.
Because you watched it on Fox.
Is Eddie Murphy says, "You move that camera one more time, and I'll bust your ass." And 3 little black kids like, "Yeah, that's funny." And my dad turned it off because no,
And that's early in the movie.
that's right. So I hadn't seen Golden
That's
Child.
the thing with the turtle.
That's right.
Yeah, I remember watching Porky's with my parents and having to cover my eyes. And based on just dialogue alone, I had no clue what was going on, man. I was like 10 years younger, 85.
Sure.
But yeah, absolutely. So one of the fun things that Alex mentioned that I thought was really, really cool was that he said he loved the world that these movies built themselves around. Like these movies built these crazy worlds. They were able to really get into things at that time. So I want to know, Alex, what 80s comedy world would you want to live in?
Have an unorthodox choice. All right. A Very Brady Christmas is 1988. And the reason I chose that one was because was because of the plot. This plot is the most darling thing I've ever read. Mike and Carol Brady have a savings account with both spouses plan to use as a bankroll for a vacation for the other. And Carol wants to take Mike to Greece. Mike wants to take Carol to Japan. And when they realize their ideas collide, they say, why don't we just fly the kids in with tickets that we so we can all love each other as a family. It's the most low stakes, no trouble, and that's I love that. I love that about like no, it's not really a problem. It's just we just want to. I love you. Who loves who more? That's the argument.
That's the most benign problem you can have is we have to figure out a way to express our love for each other.
Yeah, that's actually very, very poignant, man. I like that answer.
Nobody's getting divorced.
I like
Nobody's
that
got
answer.
a drug problem.
Right, and nothing's getting blown up. Or
No.
There's no, we got to get to this thing for this thing to happen. No.
Yeah.
Fly the kids in and love each other as a family. It's like...
That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah.
I should have went to you last. Richard, what about you?
I would choose to live, at least at the time anyway, the John Hughes universe to me always seemed, because it was suburban and it was well-to-do. And I grew up in the 80s in Miami where there was a lot of drugs, a lot of crime. I would step out of my house sometimes, and in the horizon you could see the black smoke rising from where there would be riots going on. And I would watch these John Hughes movies, and everything was fine. Everybody was well-to-do, and I would go, I want to live there. That looks like the ideal place. Now you look at it and you're like, well, where are the minorities? Where are the gay people? Where are all the others in this world? But at the time, it was so idyllic. I wanted to live there. Even the nerds. Yeah. The nerds weren't really nerds in these movies. Like Anthony Michael Hall, he wasn't really a nerd. Like if you watch 16 Candles, he's cocky. He's got confidence. He's trying to hit on Molly Ringwald. He's aggressively
he's punching above
trying
his
to
weight
hit
class.
on her.
That's right.
Prior to that, nerds were like the guys that they had their pants up to their belly button. Up to their nipples, and they wore suspenders, and they kind of tied weird like that. Anthony Michael Hall was a suave nerd.
Yeah.
What a great place to live in the John Hughes universe.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. That's John Hughes.
Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
it is. I have the same answer.
What's that?
Richard, the John Hughes
John
universe.
Hughes universe.
The John Hughes universe.
Yeah.
I always thought growing up that's what teenage years, I thought that's what high school was going to be like. Mm-hmm. It was going to be like 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, super dramatic.
Nope.
Lots of life revelations and all that stuff. And then as an adult, I watch those movies and I'm like, those movies are about how that's not what teenage years are like.
Yeah.
Honestly. But it is but it captures that feeling of what it's like to be a teenager and how important everything is before you realize it's not.
Especially love.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you're 15, 16, every emotion you feel is magnified 10 times. So that first love is just the most epic thing in the world.
All your relationships are compressed in high school.
Yep.
And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that this is basically a white suburbia fantasy. And I don't know what that says about me as a child, but I don't know. I'm glad you mentioned that because there is some elements missing in the John Hughes universe.
I don't think that was done with malice or forethought.
No, not at all.
I don't think so
but the
either,
world that they live in, where there are families, and maybe the parents don't really care or pay attention, and that's just what we thought about. We'll get into a lot more of that later.
And the parents, them not caring, it wasn't malicious. They were busy with work. They weren't they didn't have drinking problems and they were ignoring their kids.
In some of those movies.
In some of those movies, right.
What about you, John? What world would you live in from an 80s comedy?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, that's a good answer.
That's good.
The whole animation, that I could hang out with, Daffy Duck, and that whole concept to me just mind blowing. When I first saw that, this is obviously pre-Cool World. So this is the first time I saw the animation, and I think the first time on the big screen where you have the animation and film come together, and it works so well. And a great cast too. You got Bob Hoskins. I'd love to work with Bob Hoskins. He's a PI. I'd be his partner, man. We'd go track down murders in Toontown. That would be an awesome gig.
Yeah, that's actually a really good answer, man. I'm actually glad now that I went to John last.
It's like the 50s and 60s versions of Daffy Duck and all those characters.
That's right.
So you got, white guys with cigars saying what they think is funny, and that's where they come from.
Exactly. Old white Jewish guys.
It's hilarious.
Speaking of Bob Hoskins, there were a lot of great actors in the 80s and a lot of great roles. So I actually start with Alex. Who are some of your favorite actors from the 80s or in some of the roles they've played? Is there any that stand out in your mind?
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but that's not a comedy, is it?
Okay, we're gonna keep it to comedies. I should have specified
Tom Hanks.
in a comedic role.
Tom Hanks.
Oh yeah.
I feel like each time and every time he kills it. He puts it all out there. He puts his work boots on in every single movie and just goes to the hilt. I think what was it? The
Burbs.
The Burbs. Dragnet. Like one of my
Joe versus the volcano.
The Money Pit.
The Money Pit.
Oh my God!
Wow.
That meltdown when the bathtub falls through the ceiling is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
Laugh.
Yes.
Big.
That's right.
Big.
That's right.
Big. What else did he?
Is he the one that gets caught in the
Splash.
rug in the hole and
Splash.
almost falls?
Turner and
Splash.
Hooch is in 80s, isn't it?
Turner and
Turner
Hooch.
Hooch, I think
Turner
was that
Hooch,
90s?
I think that was late 80s. I think it's like 89.
Okay.
The
I could
early
be wrong.
90s are
I could be
basically the
wrong.
80s.
Might as well be. Yeah.
But he was dominant force even throughout the 90s. I mean,
That's right.
he's Tom Hanks. He still is. I mean, he still sells.
He still is Tom Hanks.
Yeah, he still
Yeah.
sells. I mean, he still is Tom Hanks, but he also, like,
His career's evolved.
Oh yeah,
for
he's
sure.
done very well for
He's
himself.
and him and Michael Keaton, they've had such a great
Michael
trajectory.
Keaton. Yeah, that's right.
And Gina Davis, I think, like for a
Oh
female.
yeah. Oh yeah. Nice.
Even though, parts for women back then.
Oof, yeah.
Enough said.
What about you? Are there certain actors?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the 80s belong to Eddie Murphy and Bill Murray. That's just there's no and both on opposite sides of performance wise, the energy that they brought. Bill Murray brought the lazy, don't give a shit kind of energy, the don't try too hard energy, and Eddie Murphy was all attitude and just
That's right.
the con man, the fast talking con man. Just really, you can tell he was a stand up.
Yeah.
Because
That's
he,
right.
he was good. He was good at speaking and speaking quickly and using his words. But yeah, Eddie Murphy and Bill Murray. I mean, look, you got Stripes, Meatballs, the Beverly Hills Cop series, 48 Hours,
Caddyshack.
Yeah, come on. I mean,
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Jesus, those two
Coming
guys
to
alone.
America, Trading
Coming to
Places.
America, Trading Places. I forgot about those two guys alone. If you put if you stacked up their comedies, they would make up at least. That's a great top 15
You always had
list
something
right
to watch
there.
during the 80s.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
is.
That's 50% of the 80s comedies. Just those two actors.
Absolutely,
Great actors in both SNL.
both SNL alum.
Dan
Yeah,
Aykroyd, too.
yeah. Oh, God. And don't forget Chevy. Chevy was big in the 80s.
Oh yeah, Chevy. Chevy and all the SNL guys had migrated and done such a great job. But Bill Murray. Yeah,
Bill Murray,
great.
icon.
What about you, Robbie?
Well, I got Bill Murray on my list too. I also have John Candy.
Oh my God,
I think John Candy was so good. You mentioned Stripes.
Underrated.
Roles like that, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Vacation,
Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck.
Love Uncle Buck.
The Great
Great
Outdoors.
Outdoors.
Great Outdoors.
Like some really good movies. Armed and Dangerous with Eugene Levy. I
Oh,
love
my
that
God,
movie.
yes.
Like that was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I had I videotaped it off of an HBO when I first
Yeah.
learned how to do that, and I watched it over and over and over
Did
again.
you want to be like a courier for?
No, not at all. But I wanted to be a weatherman at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, I really liked Gary Dobbs a lot.
That's an oddly specific sort of.
Yeah, I wanted to be a weatherman. That didn't work out somehow. I also I really like Lily Tomlin, especially in 9 to 5. I think she's so brilliant. She's brilliant today in the show on Netflix, Grace and Frankie.
Yeah.
which is so funny.
Did you see All of Me with her and Steve Martin?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
she's so funny, and I just love her.
9 to 5.
Yes, 9 to 5. Like with Jane Fonda and
Yep,
Dolly
Dolly
Parton.
Parton.
I love her sass. I love her she is so dry, and she can also she's a very versatile
Yes.
comedic actor, and I just think there are some great actors from the 80s. What about you, John? I bet I know what you're gonna say.
Well, we already talked
Was
about.
he a Batman?
Tom Hanks. Did we talk about Chevy Chase?
A little
we
bit,
touched
yeah.
on it,
Steve Martin, and then Alex mentioned earlier, and I'll be straight with everybody and let everybody know that my favorite actor of all time is actually Michael Keaton. So I'm happy you brought him up. But he was a dominant force in the 80s
those
too,
eyebrows,
because
man.
of Johnny Dangerously, Mr. Mom, Gung Ho.
And Mr. Mom is another John Hughes movie.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, he wrote it. He didn't direct it.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So
You just told me something new.
I'm missing things. Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah, Michael Keaton's so great.
The Dream Team?
The Dream Team. I love Michael Keaton. So I'm biased, but that's probably my definitive.
absolutely.
And there may be some Michael Keaton movies
And
in my top 5.
Some great comedies that he's in from the 80s, and that's the reason why people didn't think you'd play a good Batman.
Yeah, they're like, why
You know,
would
he
you get a
started out
funny
as a
guy?
stand-up. Did you ever see him do a
Did he
stand-up?
really?
He started out as a stand-up.
I didn't know that.
Did a
Way
lot of
back in the
sitcoms,
day.
too. He did it with Jim Belushi.
That's right. They were roommates or
Working
something.
stiffs.
Yeah, it was your typical sort of working slobs,
That's
odd
funny.
couple-ish type
With
of thing.
Jim.
With Jim Belushi.
With Jim.
Yep.
Mr. Destiny himself. So,
Oh, Destiny Turns on the Radio? Is that what you mean?
we were talking about these actors, John. A lot of these actors that we mentioned, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, these guys all came from Saturday Night Live. So let's talk about the influence SNL had definitely on 80s comedies. It was a very, very big deal when it came out. It first debuted on October 11th, 1975. It was created by Lorne Michaels and developed by Dick Ebersol. And who didn't watch SNL? Every generation has their favorite SNL cast. But some of these guys originally, and we're also talking about Jane Curtin, we're talking about Nora Dunn, Gilda Radner, Garrett Morgan, John Belushi, of course, all those Spinal Tap guys, right? And Billy Crystal, you know, and you had Al Franken as a writer at the time, and it was just such a brilliant show. It really captured its moment in the zeitgeist. It was so, because it was weekly and they were working on it, set in New York. It was always important. It always dealt with politics. It's still a very influential television show today that our president feels the need to review it on Twitter. So it's still a very, very big deal. What about its influence on these comedies? Obviously, the actors are a big part of it. It helped develop these careers, and it helped bring more talent to SNL, because once they saw Chevy Chase go off to stardom, and Dan Aykroyd, and
Chevy
Bill
was
Murray,
the first to go.
everybody wanted to do that.
And I didn't know Bill Murray was brought in to replace Chevy Chase.
Chevy left
I didn't
after
realize
1
that.
year.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It was in the
the
middle of the second year when he left. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Billy
it was
Crystal
super,
wasn't
super
there
quick.
long either.
No, not at all. So let's talk about its influence. Alex, what do you think was the biggest influence, aside from maybe the actors, but of course that's going to be a part of it. But what are your thoughts on the influence of SNL on 80s comedies in particular?
I think, like I said, they were able to create these worlds, and it's to do with the fact that it's a sketch show, so the pitch. So they had to, whatever their movie ideas has to be, maybe three sentences, so they could get a producer or a studio interested in what they were doing. And like I said, creatively. So they would go off in all directions. It would be maybe a little surreal. Maybe they would bring in some sketch performers or something like that into the movie. But I think that's what it is. The pitch.
And not to mention those guys, since they did sketch comedy, they would be called upon to play a variety of roles. So you could take any one of those actors and slide them into any role, supporting, lead, drama, and they would come in like Bill Murray in Caddyshack. That's a cameo. It's a glorified cameo, and from what I understand, he basically improv'd everything.
Oh yeah,
which that's that SNL
with Chevy Chase.
With Chevy Chase,
who
they did not
appreciate each other.
No. And like John mentioned, Murray replaced Chase.
That's right.
Yeah. So what about you, Richard? Then like the influence of SNL on 80s comedies.
Well, pretty much what Alex was saying was that the SNL basically turned into a sort of a minor league baseball team for the big leagues of Hollywood.
And still really is.
Yeah, it's a farm team. You go there, you kind of make your bones, you hone your discipline, you discipline yourself to come up with these sketches and these characters, and you write and you write and you write, and you have to commit to the bit. For 3 minutes, you go out there and you commit to the bit, and that's and then that translates to Hollywood. You got to go out there and you got to, because the most important thing is to commit. If you can tell if an actor is not into it, then the audience is completely just taken out of it.
Oh, absolutely. You're totally right there. John, what about you? What do you have to say on the influence of SNL on 80s comedies?
Yeah, I think not only do you have these great actors leaving SNL and moving on to bigger and better things, but you also have, I think, film studios were seeing not only these great talent, but seeing some of the things, the envelopes they were pushing on SNL, and like, oh, we could do this and get away with it. We can do this because that's funny now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I think studios took more of a chance. And then you're right. It was like the minor leagues. So they're seeing these people
I like that analogy.
come in there and be funny and do these variety of characters. So I think the studios are more inclined to take a chance on these guys than somebody they never heard of.
Right.
Yes.
They're a proven commodity.
Yeah, but the flip side of the coin to that, and the sad part is that you've got these great actors who didn't stick around SNL very long because they moved on. Some have done very well. It's not always the case. Some people have struggled. Because sometimes if you can write a 3-minute sketch or your sketch, if you're funny for 3 minutes, it may not translate to being funny for an hour and a half.
That's true.
So it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
But SNL definitely, I think, influenced 80s comedy a lot and gave us some great actors.
You mentioned how not every sketch that they do, or sketch, depending on the year that they were doing it, because it was a sketch from
they
late
changed it later on.
77 or 78.
It evolved.
Derived from the original Greek sketch.
The first movie from basically an SNL sketch was Blues Brothers, and that was 1980. And then they kind of took a whole decade off, and then they had Wayne's World, and then they did a bunch of movies, and some to varying success.
Boy.
But it doesn't like
it's
Superstar Night at the Roxbury. These are these are not obviously 80s film ladies man. These are just they're sketches that are brilliant and fun. But they don't necessarily translate, but the talent did.
Yes.
And I love the farm team analogy. And it was also a minor league for comedy writers.
Oh my
as
God.
well. Conan O'Brien got his start
Conan O'Brien.
there, and like a
Yeah,
lot
Bob
of talent.
Bob Odenkirk and Al
Absolutely.
Franken. I think Louis C.K. was a writer on SNL
Little
for a
later in
while.
80s.
Sarah
but,
Silverman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Robert Smigel.
So it has an absolutely huge influence on 80s comedies,
Yeah.
on these actors, these performers. Great stuff. We're going to be talking more about 80s comedies, including some common tropes, themes, and motifs, and including our favorite villains. All that is coming up more with a spotlight on John Hughes here on Pop Culture Philosophers, 80s Comedies. Hey everybody, Rockin' Robbie here. I want to talk to you real quick about our YouTube channel. You got to get on YouTube, find Pop Culture Philosophers, and subscribe. There you will find the weekly comic book review, new comic book reviews every single week. Also the weekly pop culture wrap-up. It's also the only place you can find the Rockin' with Rockin' Robbie podcast. And we just launched a brand new show called Movie Monday. Every Monday, a new video. We're going to be talking about movies, and we are starting with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everything from Iron Man all the way up to Avengers Infinity War. That's right, Movie Monday every Monday on our YouTube channel, as well as the weekly comic book review and other such favorites and surprises along the way. So, check us out at youtube.com/popculturephilosophers.
Welcome back to Pop Culture Philosophers. We're talking about 80s comedies. Earlier we talked about our favorite actors and some of our favorite sketches. Now we're going to talk about favorite villains from the 80s, because there's some awesome 80s movies that have some awesome and interesting and unique
80s
bad
comedies
guys.
in particular.
Yeah, and the 80s comedies. 80s in general, but the comedies, there's some that really stand out. So I'm actually going to start with Richard. Are there some villains from 80s comedies that stand out in your mind, or ones that you really like?
Ferris Bueller. Because fuck that guy, that's why.
Wait, Ferris
my
Bueller's
God.
the bad
Ferris
guy?
Bueller is a piece of shit.
Coming in hot.
If you actually
Coming in
really,
hot.
if you break that movie down and study it, he is the villain.
I can't stand that guy, that disgusting little elitist sociopath piece of crap.
Wow.
I hate him.
I thought the principal was the bad guy.
No, the principal's the good guy. The principal and Ferris's sisters are the heroes of that movie. I wish I'd gone to school with Ferris Bueller. I would have knifed him in the bathroom. I hate that guy. Ferris Bueller's the kind of guy that would grow up. Let me tell you something. Ferris Bueller's the kind of guy that would grow up and join a restricted country club. That's who Ferris Bueller is. Ferris Bueller only cares about himself. Cameron is trying to do the responsible thing and not fuck around with his dad's car, and Ferris Bueller only concerned about himself. He wants to drive his dad's car. He doesn't care about liberating Cameron or whatever horseshit he's feeding Cameron. He's a selfish little elitist prick, and he wants to drive that car. Let me tell you. I wanted
He talks about it all the time.
I wanted a car for my birthday, and all I got was this super expensive fancy keyboard. Fuck you, Ferris. You piece of shit. Fucking constantly addressing the camera, you smug Republican
Somebody
piece of
pointed
God.
out, by the way,
Hate that guy. Hate him.
somebody online pointed out, by the way, that his computer was like 4 times as much as her Fiero, because his sister gets a Fiero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A great Fiero.
Whining about he got a...
That's funny.
You seen the house that kid lives in?
Really nice.
And the whole everybody loves Ferris. Fuck you, no they don't. The stoners, the dweebs, everybody loves Ferris. Bueller, anybody seen Bueller? Yeah, I've seen him. He's skipping.
Yeah.
Let's go to his house, and if he's not there, I say we burn his fucking house down. Fucking Ferris Bueller. I fucking hate that kid.
Wow.
I hate him. Oh
Wow.
my God. Now I'm mad. Now I'm legitimately angry now.
All
I feel
right.
bad for bringing
All
the
right.
topic up at all.
We're all
I feel like
scared.
I'm something
We're all
that's
scared
guilty.
now.
Damn it, Ferris Bueller.
What about you, Robbie? There's some.
Whoa.
If we can bring it down like 2 notches.
Yeah, I'll try. The
is-
first,
Should we pray?
yeah, I think we should. I got a couple here I want to mention real quick. I said a couple. I got more than a couple. Vigo von Homburg Deutschendorf
From the second.
from the second,
Ghostbusters?
yeah, the Scourge of Carpathia
Oh.
from the second Ghostbusters film.
He's got that sexy painting.
Vigo the Butch.
Steph McKee, actually, from Pretty in Pink. That's James Spader.
Oh,
The
scumbag.
epitome of the teen
80s.
comedy douchebag.
Yep.
Yeah.
He and
Right?
Ferris were probably good friends.
And a close second to him is Stan Gable from Revenge of the Nerds, played by
Ooh.
Ted McGinley,
That's right.
who was also in Married with Children, if you remember that. But he was
Yeah.
those two guys are the epitome of that frat boy douchebag bro,
Yep.
right? Assistant principal Vernon, played by Paul Gleason from Breakfast Club.
Oh God, yeah.
And
good choice.
RDJ and Bill Paxton from Weird Science.
Oh, Bill Paxton was so good.
Like those bullies, man.
He's like, is he the brother or the stepbrother?
Well, Bill Paxton is like the brother.
Chet.
Okay.
Yeah, Chet. And then RDJ, Robert Downey Jr. for those.
There's the two bullies from the.
You remember
him and another
his idiot
guy.
friend's name?
No.
I'm Max, but you can call me Mad Max.
That's right.
and he's trying to impress
It's a good
Kelly
mo- it's a
LeBrock,
good
and she
movie.
looks at him like, you fucking worm. Get away from me.
Yeah. So I will go with those ones and be a little bit less vitriol in my head for them.
I wonder if Matthew Broderick listens to the show, or if he will after this.
I hope so.
I don't think
He's a
that was.
Patreon
I don't
supporter,
think.
I
I
think.
don't think that Richard was against Matthew Broderick. I
Just
think he
the
was against the
character.
character
I
of
love
Ferris
Biloxi
Bueller
Blues. Biloxi Blues is an amazing
and Glory.
movie.
Ho, no.
And
Ho.
Just plain ho. Sir.
That's right.
Like Ferris Bueller.
I noticed you didn't bring up Godzilla at all.
Oh,
Matthew
Who
Broderick.
does?
bring that up. I'd like to perform an autopsy on Ferris while he's alive. It's called a big Y in
Damn,
his
bro.
chest.
Trying to think of somebody that has brought me to that level of anger that's in the 80s. And I just...
You could also just love him, like a love to hate thing, like a villain. You know what I'm saying? Like Vigo's badass from Ghostbusters too.
William Atherton.
William Atherton.
And for those that don't know, he played the dickhead
The
in
EPA
Die
guy
Hard.
from Ghostbusters.
EPA guy from Ghostbusters. He was
Real
also
genius.
Real
Yes.
genius. He also played. He reprised that character.
Was
in
that the
Die
one where
Hard
like
2.
this guy's got no
right.
dick? Is that the?
That's right.
And he does an interview where he talks about how he's greeted with that whenever someone recognizes him down the street. They always call him Dickless, and that's the legacy of that movie.
I hope those
follows him
royalties
forever.
are good because that's a
poor man.
horrible thing. Hey, Dickless!
Seems like the sweetest guy, but he always plays, and I think it's because of his authoritarian demeanor, and he's got a very punchable face. He's just God made him that way. He's got this perfect. I'm the
Why
worst.
not make money off it?
Yeah,
You know, I almost said the principal from Ferris Bueller, and I'm very glad I didn't. I'm very glad
Jeffrey
now.
Jones.
After thinking about that though,
Isn't he also the bad guy?
He
in
also
Howard
plays
the
bad
Duck.
guy.
He's the bad guy in a lot of stuff.
yeah.
fuck that movie, man.
He gets possessed and he becomes.
I
a
hate
villain.
that movie like Richard hates Ferris Bueller. Have you read that comic book?
Well, no, I'm just
That
thinking.
comic book is political parody genius, and that movie is
Well,
garbage.
the movie's not good, but I was just
That
thinking
movie
he,
is such
he played
garbage.
a bad guy, but he's in
They
Stay
made
Tuned
Leah
as the
Thompson
bad guy.
do a
He's
bad
in a lot
movie.
of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
he
can't
is.
remember that actor's name. He was a great actor.
He's Jeffrey Jones.
Jeffrey
Yeah.
Jones.
Jeffrey Jones. He's
Beetlejuice.
yeah.
Oh,
He's
he
also in
is, yeah.
Beetlejuice. Yeah, right. Did
Oh,
you
yeah,
say that?
he is in
Yeah, he's
Beetlejuice.
the
Yeah.
dad. Yeah. Okay. Man,
Anybody else you want to bring up?
That's a good
besides,
answer. That's a good answer,
The
though,
gentleman
Alex.
from Ghostbusters.
I mean, that William Atherton,
trying to think, but
that's as good as it gets.
At least you looked that guy's
Well,
name
it's
up because I remember him and I wanted to bring him up, but I couldn't remember. I didn't know the actor's name.
this guy's not
Did your
a
research.
it's not a movie actor, but it's the what are you going to do with your life? The dad from that video.
Oh,
is that the same guy? Oh, that guy that played that guy.
He's not in a movie, but it's like it's the 80s, but he was. I do
Twisted
hate him.
Sister video.
That's
Yeah.
right. I do.
That's
yeah,
right.
that's a good one.
I would nominate Billy Zabka. He was Back to School. He's the bad guy in Back to School. Remember that?
Oh.
And in The Karate Kid, some would say he's the hero.
Oh, come on.
Listen, Ralph Macchio is another guy that deserves to get the shit beat out of him in that movie.
Oh, whatever.
All right.
You and Kitty don't like Rob Macchio in the Karate Kid.
You're not watching the Cobra Kai series?
Oh, I am going to watch it.
Oh,
okay.
I'm going to watch it.
You're on the wrong side, homie.
Ralph Macchio gets a
You're on the
beating in
wrong
this movie.
side. What about you, John?
I'm going to bring
Lying
up
about knowing martial arts. Kick his ass.
A lot of 80s kids did that.
Right.
Judge Doom from Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
Okay.
that's frightening.
Yeah, dude, he was
Christopher Lloyd.
frightening. Christopher
Christopher
Lloyd
Lloyd.
is scary as shit in
He
that.
killed that little shoe cartoon
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Remember me when I killed your brother? And he's a cartoon or whatever.
that's
Jesus.
right.
Johnny the Paperboy from Better Off Dead. Remember him and his cronies like keep stalking John
He
Cusack?
wants his
I like
$2.
that.
The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
Nice.
Not really a comedic, but yeah.
That's a comedy.
He did
Blink
go
your-
out to do
yeah.
more. That's a
Blink
shame.
your mind. Oh, I thought of the start of Marshmallow. Well, he was killed in the film.
He was
That's true.
typecast. He couldn't really do
And
much.
the last one is one that stuck with me, and this is actually a film that I recently showed to my nephews who've never seen this and not familiar with Mel Brooks, but I showed them Spaceballs, and they thought it was the greatest fucking film of all time. They laughed their asses off. And just so Dark Helmet.
That's right.
Lord Dark Helmet.
I didn't care for that movie. To me, growing up on Mel Brooks' movies like Young
Yeah.
Frankenstein and
Yeah,
Blazing
he's got
Saddles,
way better films.
Yeah. So when I saw that, it was kind of a letdown. But going back and watching it now, as a Star Wars parody and a parody of sci-fi in general, it works. But as a Mel Brooks movie,
Go
kinda
watch
interesting.
History of the World Part 2
It's a
instead.
second tier.
Yeah.
What was it?
History of the World Part 2.
History of the World Part 2.
Watch that
Come on.
instead.
It's good to be the
I
king.
think that's the better Mel Brooks film of the 80s is History of the World.
It's good to be the king.
Part 1.
Did that come out in the 80s?
Part 1 did,
Oh,
yeah.
that's a great movie.
I'm pretty sure it did.
Seize this, honkus.
Ha.
Oh, a bullshit artist.
So we talked a lot about 80s comedies tonight. Now let's talk about what makes an 80s comedy. There's common tropes and themes, motifs, all this stuff. Like, first of all, it's the decade of excess.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is super excessive. You got the power dressing. Everybody at night was dressing up in crazy, like,
Everybody drives fucking DeLoreans.
pastels, crazy good cars. This was the era of drugs, cocaine, Wall Street. So there's a lot of anti-drug type messages in these movies. What's that Robert Downey Jr. movie?
But that was during
Super
Less Than
anti-drug.
Zero.
That was also the era.
Less Than Zero, right? Yeah.
Wasn't
That's the
that-
one that had the Bangles song?
Wasn't that during the era when Reagan was pushing the anti-drugs
Yes.
thing?
And you had that Reagan era, so there's a lot of conservative values type things. Even in these movies, even though
Preppies.
you would think that the conservative values people would not be down with the excess that is in some of these movies. But it's really weird how that goes hand in hand. So you got a lot of the Wall Street stuff, dangers of drugs, dangers of Wall Street, greed. You got the coming of age, the teen sex comedy. That stuff starts coming up. Absent parents, parents that just don't see what's going on, bullies.
That's right.
You got racial stereotypes throughout the entire decade,
Awesome.
Oh, dear.
right?
That's my
What's
favorite
the
part.
dude?
Well, as a
from-
black man, we do like to dance.
But what about 16 Candles with
Long Duck Dong.
Yeah,
Jesus
exactly.
Christ.
Right.
It's like the only Asian guy in John Hughes' entire cinematic ouvre, if that's the right word.
That and Mickey Rooney from Breakfast at
Breakfast at
Tiffany's.
Tiffany's. Jesus.
Some
And
of
you
the
know,
worst.
At least they got an Asian guy to play him.
the one thing that
Best you can say about that.
sums it all up to me is that these 80s comedies were mostly about white suburbia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
it's like upper middle
Yeah.
class.
Exactly. So, Richard, speak a little bit on the tropes, the themes of these movies.
I would say the biggest tropes of the movies in the comedies, it was probably there was a lot of classism, a lot of what you would call slobs versus snobs. Right. You look at Porky's. You look at Ghostbusters. Kind of they were the kind of slob characters and against the sort of the snobbish type characters. Teen comedies, pretty much. I mean, there were all types of comedies, all types of genres of comedies, but I'd say the biggest genre of comedy and the dominant one. Same way in horror, that the dominant genre of horror in the 80s was slasher films. Right. The dominant genre of comedy, I think, was teen comedies. And what you got to know is you got a lot of breasts, a lot of nudity, a lot of misogyny, a lot of casual sort of homophobia, right. and just lots and lots of vulgarity.
And they always destroyed the house at the party.
Yeah.
I've never done that at anyone's house.
No.
That actually happened at a party of mine.
What's that?
You were at that party. My house got destroyed.
Really?
At one of my parties. Yeah, when I was like 19, 20. Super completely destroyed. My grandmother, who I lived with at the time, was in Ohio. We had a big party. And seriously, it was like 3 days calling friends over to finish off the beer, finish off the liquor, and clean this house up. Because there was like orange juice dripping from the walls, caked on. The carpet was, we had to have it steam cleaned, man. It was like, it was one of the aftermaths of one of those parties.
When in the 80s, when I was a teenager, my friends and I, we would drive to the beach. We'd drive to South Beach, drive to Miami Beach, whatever, and we would get drunk, and then we would just walk around the beach, jump the fence of whatever hotel we would see, and throw all the pool furniture in the pool.
Because why not?
Because we were pieces of shit. That's why.
Because you were Ferris Bueller.
Except working class
See,
Ferris
you hate Ferris Bueller because he reminds you of you.
I hate Ferris Bueller because he's what I would be if I had money. A scumbag little sociopath piece of shit.
I like it. What about you, Alex? What about the tropes, the common tropes, like the things that just stick out for you?
Very specific ones where every high school teacher or college professor in the 80s always got interrupted by the bell. In mid-sentence, he would go, don't forget, as they're walking out, as they're filing out, don't forget to read chapters 2 through 14. And the kids would always go, oh. And that made me angry because it's school, bitches.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Not to mention, every teacher I ever had would be like, sit down, the bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you.
Yes,
Right.
no kidding. No
Like
kidding.
that.
That's
Yeah.
right. Another one is the L-shaped bedspread in every 80s movie that covers the woman's breasts, but is still low enough for the man's lower half to be covered also,
right.
which
That's
is
right.
a weird thing.
That's only in like 40% of the 80s comedy.
You always saw female nudity, but you never saw male nudity.
Because misogyny, because sexism.
Yeah, and a tiny penis.
Yeah, well, that.
I always
and even today, people are like, "God damn, man, Watchmen's okay, but fucking blue penis, I can't stand it." and you're thinking it like, I know you probably have watched porn.
I think the first one, the first penis I ever saw in a comedy was the Jason Segel. Or the
and Forgetting Sarah Marshall's or Super Troopers.
That's right. And
Super Troopers.
Whoa! And it wasn't in like an independent movie where it's like,
what about real life?
So they flipped the script. That's right.
If ever a penis was going to show up in an 80s comedy, you'd think it would have been Porky's, but,
Penises were used comedically, whereas women's bodies were used to turn you on, but you were supposed to laugh at
Yeah, it was meant to be titillating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Said tit. But,
titillating.
But male nudity is funny.
That's right.
It's played for laughs. It's never played for... Well, also because penises are just hideous.
They are, yeah.
They are
well, I don't know. I think the penis is a majestic creature. What about you, John?
I don't like the direction
do you think the penis is a majestic? No. What do you think about the tropes?
Penises are the Steve Buscemi of organs.
The themes. So what do you think about the common tropes in this movie? What sticks out to you?
I don't want to see your penis. That's what I just come to mind.
It's a very good character actor.
He is great, though. He is great.
Oh, my penis is great in a lot of things.
God damn it.
Tip your waitress.
I feel like we've derailed the whole show.
Like usual.
Richard talked about earlier about the geek guy, but you're right. Some of these people that we associate as being the loser or the outcast now, the guys back then don't seem that really like, you know what I'm saying? They didn't have really bad acne or, these things that you think of.
That's true. Even the nerds in movies were relatively good looking guys.
because they're actors.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
Nerd uniform, the nerd uniform from the 80s drifted into the 90s. I remember seeing it on Saved by the Bell, where it was the tape in the middle of the glasses and the pulled up pants and the kind of like, why did that survive? Why did that survive for so long? That's not how they dress. That's a like a minstrel show kind of outfit for nerds.
I straight up went to high school with people that look like Screech's posse. I swear to God.
Really?
I straight up went to high school with people like that. They would break their glasses. They would tape them together.
Well, you got to be able to fucking see.
They took all the computer science classes.
Really?
If I lived in Michigan, John would probably have been one of them.
I didn't go to school.
I'm going to be honest with you,
that.
man. You know who I was in high school?
Who were you in high school?
At first, I was like...
You were a bully.
No. Well... At first, I was the Anthony Michael Hall from 16 Candles.
Gotcha. Yeah.
No, actually from Breakfast Club, then 16 Candles.
Okay.
Then I became a little bit of a Ferris Bueller.
You would talk.
I think I would have. Did you? I would have hated Robbie. I think I would have hated you. Fucking kid, I hate
you.
That
Probably did. Anyway.
And now you're the Anthony Michael Hall from Dead Zone?
Oh, God.
Yes.
And the other one I was going to bring up is the jock. The bad guy was always the jock. He was a really good-looking guy. He was always into sports.
Yeah.
He didn't give a shit about his lady. Mm-hmm. And, the nerd guy would be so good to her.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you got to know her, you wouldn't be, because maybe this person's a terrible person. You
don't
actually
the
know
jock
this.
was never the well-rounded character. They never talked about, maybe he's insecure. Maybe that's why he's
there was never a single redeeming thing about him, to the point to where you would go, why are you with this guy in the first place?
You know, I will say one thing, though. In 16 Candles, the jock preppy guy...
was a good guy.
It was the good guy.
He was a good guy.
That's a good guy.
What's his name?
That was a breath of fresh
Jake
air.
Ryan.
Jake Ryan.
Yeah. What's his real name?
Jake Ryan.
I don't think that's his
Jake Ryan. Yeah, Jake Ryan played Jake Ryan. Come on.
Michael Sheffling?
And then,
I don't know how you pronounce his name.
He never did anything else.
Was it Tom Clancy that wrote that whole series of novels?
Jake Ryan.
He was in a movie called Vision Quest with Matthew Modine, where he played a wrestler.
The wrestler.
Remember that?
I
Yeah, remember that?
You know, and the cool thing is about these tropes is that a recent show, and I just want to mention this real briefly, Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. They take a lot of these 80s tropes and they turn them on their heads.
That's right.
They do it a little bit. And I really like that show.
The whole thing with Steve, where you think, he's going to turn out to be a dude. He's going to be a scumbag.
Yeah, that's a pleasant surprise.
Steve's a great guy.
Yeah. And Nancy,
I want to hate Steve.
At first, is just like Molly Ringwald's character, where she's focused on one thing and one thing only, and that's finding the right guy and getting married. 16 Candles and all that stuff, right? Yep. And then she changes, right? And then you got the nerds and how they are that's represented. They're represented like true nerds.
Exactly. But that's one of the benefits, that's one of the advantages that serialized programming has over a movie.
Yes.
You only got 2 hours. You can only do so much character development. With a show, you can explore these guys, and he can start off in episode 1 being a meathead jock, but by episode 7, he's got layers. He's a nice
Yes.
guy. He's sensitive. He's
That's one of my favorite people, Steve.
everybody loves Steve.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
Steve.
I
And
love Steve
I will
too.
tell you this: if Weird Science would have gotten to get through at least 3 movies, Robert Downey Jr.'s character would have completely turned around, and
Yeah.
Bill Paxton's character Chet would have sacrificed himself for everybody.
You think?
What's
You
the
think
Rodney
so?
Dangerfield movie that Robert Downey Jr. is
Back
in?
to School.
Back to school.
That's a
Like
great.
It's an odd character for
He
him
is.
to, but he's the harmless. It's just a harmless weirdo in there.
But he's really funny though.
That's right.
Robert Downey Jr. Great timing.
But a lot of these tropes, of course, are encapsulated by the films of John Hughes.
Yes, John Hughes, the great John Hughes, the director, writer, producer of film. He's actually from Lansing, Michigan. All the great people in the world are from Michigan. That's a fact. He wrote and directed some of the best films of the 80s. He wrote, for example, and I'm not going to cover them all because there was a lot.
Yeah.
He wrote National Lampoon's Vacation and Mr. Mom. He wrote and directed 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, among others. I'm leaving something out because he was so quintessential in the 80s as far as either writing a film or writing and directing a film, and he created some great characters. He's most known for his movies that captured the angst and humor of the teen experience, and is credited with launching the career of Anthony Michael Hall, Raleigh Ringwald, Molly Ringwald,
Ringwald.
Molly Ringworm.
He was good in those sketches.
So no, Molly Ringwald and Matthew Broderick. He's considered one of the most influential directors of the 80s.
I
One
would
of the
say
most,
so.
maybe not the most, but maybe one of the most, especially at least in comedies.
Oh, I would definitely
yes.
say so. Yeah.
There was always
And,
a human element to all of his
He
comedy.
he completely took. When you look at The Breakfast Club, it's not necessarily a comedy, but it's got comedic elements in it. So I guess it's safe to talk about it on this.
Oh
podcast.
yeah, definitely.
The
Oh, it better be.
they all start off as types. You
That's
got the
right.
jock, you got the nerd, you got the weirdo, you got the stuck-up rich girl, you got the weirdo rebel, and then as the movie goes on, he takes those types and he flips them on their head. You think Emilio Estevez is the meathead jock.
That's right.
And he's a deep, sensitive guy. He's being pushed by his father. And you know,
The
even
people you think are going to end up with
that's right.
don't end up with the people
You
they
think
end up with.
he gives them layers.
That's
He
right.
takes those 80s tropes we were
Yeah.
just talking about and just like breaks them.
Humanity. He gives his characters humanity.
Even the teacher and the janitor have
That's right.
their moments.
The
character
janitor with the scene where the janitor
Oh,
and
yeah.
the teacher are and the vice principal are talking. You're like, oh my god, these are humans. These are guys. That, you know, this is a job to them. They have a life outside of school.
You know what it is? It's seeing your teacher outside of school with his kids in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, he's a person.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got bills. He's got to buy food.
That's
I can't murder him now.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
And
Not in
dark.
front of his children. I would wait until the kids were at least out of sight before I did something. Okay, quick question. As far as the Breakfast Club is concerned, what do you think? Do you think that come Monday, you think those guys acknowledge each other in the hallways, or do you think they went back to status quo and
I
were
think
like,
they,
no,
they give a nod.
a nod, and that's it?
And
I'm there. Yeah, they give a nod and that's it.
I think the cliques are they're too entrenched in the cliques. You
Especially in
can't.
the
Now,
80s.
but here's the thing, though. What happens over time? If they
Oh,
they
yeah,
want
yeah.
to take things and redo them as episodic television, The Breakfast Club would be crazy perfect
It would absolutely be perfect. Wouldn't
because
it?
that's the pilot.
Yeah.
And then what happens afterwards?
Absolutely. There's your conflict.
What happens with Molly and Bender?
That's right. Oh my God. Yeah.
What happens with Ali Sheedy and Emilio Estevez? How does he respond to her showing up?
You ever tried that sandwich
track-
that she made in Breakfast Club?
Oh God.
You ever try to put that together?
Oh yeah,
Did you really?
Just to see
oh of
what
course.
Pixie
That's one of my
Sticks,
favorite movies
Captain
of all
Crunch,
time. Yeah,
bread, and what
yeah,
else?
and it's
Meat?
such an iconic
Was it
scene from
bologna?
that movie.
I think it was bologna.
It's such an iconic scene from that movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, she threw away the meat.
That's right.
That's right.
It-
On
She
the
threw it
statue.
up on the statue.
On the
yeah.
statue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out of here, meat.
She's vegetarian.
Captain Crunch is coming in.
And you know
Buy
what?
meat.
They bonded. How'd they all bond? Through the power of drugs.
Yeah, no kid.
Power of weed.
Marijuana in particular.
That's right. That's right.
Talking about misogyny and sexism. It was the problem with chicks. The problem with,
Chicks cannot hold this smoke. That's what it is.
that's one of my favorite parts of that movie. And
isn't it?
I still do that little shuffle dance that they do.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah.
That's such a great movie. We're going
my
to talk
God.
a lot about that, man. John Hughes is great, dude.
Oh, he's a great director.
Yeah.
And
John,
again,
what are some of your favorite
influential.
John Hughes movies? Don't spoil top 5 stuff, but like, what are some of your favorites?
I would say
Like a lot of his shit, of course, you said he's from Michigan.
He's from Lansing, Michigan.
And he lived a lot in Chicago, and he wrote a lot about Chicago.
Yeah, Shermer, Illinois, the fake city he made up, is based on where he lived.
Yes.
And it's a fictional
white
suburb,
suburbia.
And it's the one that Jay and Silent Bob try to go to.
Yes.
They find out it doesn't
that's right.
exist.
And how funny is that?
Is it Dogma that you go to that, or is it Jay and Silent Bob Strike? No, it's Dogma.
It's Dogma, because
they try to go to
there's
it.
the comic book Chasing Dogma.
That's right.
That tells the story of them going there.
Yeah, and it's not even a real city.
And they
I think
wind
would
up,
have researched that before they went.
But
But that's
yeah,
why you
you know.
see like Chevy Chase wearing like a Bears cap or something. You see Chicago influenced things because it's supposed to be a suburb of Chicago, and obviously, despite the fact that he's he may have lived in Chicago for a while, but he's from Lansing, Michigan, which is all the genius people came from, Michigan. What about you, Alex? Are there some John Hughes films you want to talk about? What do you think of John Hughes as a director?
When I first saw, I think Breakfast Club was on VHS. I checked it out from the library, and I was just thrown and enthralled by just how quickly you get to know these characters, what they're about, and how he completely... It's very nuanced. I mean, there's exposition-y moments where they tell you right out, I'm this way because of this way. But the emotion, the rage... What's who's the Bender? I think that's what, because he's
Judd Nelson's character.
Judd Nelson.
Yeah.
Sorry, blanked on his name. Judd Nelson is
The
just
criminal.
yelling at Molly. Just his rage at Molly Ringwald. It's like you're not gonna even acknowledge him when this is. And she's like,
that's right.
She is the way she is.
Yeah.
But I love how it defied my expectations. The people that you think are going to end up together don't end up together.
Right.
And Bender becomes like a kind of a hero.
Kind of, yeah.
But I love that one.
Himself. He's the Jesus character.
And that just, that's right.
He really is.
But that's what I love about.
What about you, Dad? Wow. No, son.
Smoke
what about
up.
you?
That's right.
It's a banner day in the Bender household.
It's very much play, very much like you play up the character you find out that he is really, and then with the front he puts up. Mm-hmm. So that's what I loved about John Hughes. He always switches it up.
Robbie, I know you're a big John Hughes fan. Probably the biggest John Hughes fan I know.
Really? You think that?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a huge John Hughes fan. I really am. And it all goes down to Breakfast Club to me. That movie is so good. We'll talk about that later. He's got so many great movies. All of the movies he touches are so good. Like we were talking about Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah.
Some Kind of Wonderful. He wrote that film.
That's right. That's a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, no matter what you think about that character.
God damn it.
Don't get riled up.
Vacation. And that's the world I wanted to live in because it felt, when I watched those movies growing up, it felt like that was what high school was supposed to be.
Right.
And then when I was in high school in the 90s, I rewatched those films and I really related to them. Like crazy. Like in his use of music, his music was so important to his movies. And when I write, and music is very, very important. The music that I'm thinking of, how I tie it in thematically. Maybe that means I'm kind of like plagiarizing like themes from music, but I think that's something that a lot of filmmakers do, and really good filmmakers like Richard Linklater, Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
They do stuff like that.
Michael Bay.
No.
Whoa.
Wes
Maybe
Anderson.
he's listening to really shitty music. You think about that?
But he was able to, even as an older dude, he was able to be hip in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He was able to write hip characters. And eventually he abandoned teenagers completely. And if you remember in the 90s, he moved into young kids.
That's
Home
right.
Alone, Dennis the Menace, Curly Sue. Like
She's having a baby, didn't he do that?
She's having a baby,
That's
yeah,
right.
absolutely. And so he was dealing with different things. But I just think he is a brilliant writer, a glorious filmmaker, and just such a pioneer
Well, I think,
of 80s comedies.
I think the themes that he tackled were universal.
And he tackled them in comedies.
You can look at Breakfast Club and forget the clothes, forget the slang or whatever it is. That movie is as relevant today as it was when it came out.
Yes.
I saw it in junior high.
Kids
and
have the same problem.
It really punched me in the face in junior high when I saw it.
And we're talking about the day of Porky's,
Yeah,
Meatballs.
that's right.
And
Fast Times kind of had a dramatic part to
Oh,
it.
yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
But Breakfast Club did it in such a way that I think even made the parents understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think John Hughes, as an adult at the time, was trying to get people his age to understand what their kids were going through.
Yeah.
Because it's the same stuff that they went through, no matter what. You look at any kind of generational teen movie like that, Dazed and Confused,
Yeah.
American Graffiti, Clerks, even almost. They're not really teenagers there, but it's like a good 90s Generation X type movie. These are these characters that you just think of, that you just ignore. And that's the opening quote with David Bowie. And it made music seem so relevant.
Didn't the kids in the Breakfast Club, the one thing I thought that they all had in common was that they all had sort of distant parents?
Yes.
Like
I think a lot of people as teenagers believe that, though.
In his, yeah.
Because my parents didn't, like, my parents, like, people think it's cool because they were like, did you have a curfew? I'm like, no, I didn't have a curfew. They were like, you could do whatever you want. You could be back whenever you want. I very rarely got in trouble for stuff like that.
Right.
But at the same time, you're kind of like, you see this stuff in movies and you see other friends of yours, but their parents do care. And like, you have to be back by this time. And at the same time, you're like, I love the freedom, but do you not care?
Right.
And I think everybody at some point in their life, from preteen to teenage, thinks and questions, do my parents, does society, do my authority figures, does God, do they even care about me? Because it feels as a teenager that most people don't. And I think John Hughes captured that so well.
Yeah.
Well, I think, too, that when you're a teen, there's certain things your parents restrict you from, and you think they don't like you because of that, when reality is they're trying to protect you. But you're right, in Breakfast Club, some of his films, he was showing that parents were just preoccupied with the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. They have other kids. They have full-time jobs. And so the kids slip through the cracks.
Did 16 Candles They Forget Her Birthday?
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And on the 16th birthday for a woman.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yep.
It was a big deal for me. I remember getting the pink candles and yeah, and I remember making out with Jake Ryan. It was a pretty big deal.
We are running a little bit long, so let me go ahead and segue from John Hughes. And I was talking about the importance of music. Mm-hmm. That opening quote in Breakfast Club, which is the Bill Murray. Holy shit. The David Bowie line.
People get those two confused all the time.
From Changes, right?
Bill Murray does do a great version of Changes.
He does. But
Changes.
That validated pop music as a legitimate form of poetry, and putting his quote up there in front of Breakfast Club made it seem like David Bowie was just as relevant as Lord Tennyson. Mm-hmm. Or anything like that, like any poet that we love and respect. So let's talk about the music.
All right.
Because I'll go ahead and start, because we're talking about John Hughes. And to me, the best soundtracks of the 80s comedies are Breakfast Club and Weird Science.
Weird Science had great.
You can even add in Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. They have great music. Now, I love Breakfast Club. That movie is very special to me, but Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, it launched their career. It was so good. Oingo Boingo and Weird Science.
To this day, when I hear "Don't You Forget About Me," I think of the Breakfast Club.
Yes, you did.
Fist in the air.
And let me tell you, I don't.
And I always do the fist freeze frame in the air when I hear that song.
Even when you're driving, that could be awkward.
Oh yeah,
because it's a capper for the movie, and it kind of encapsulates. Because they argue about that. It's like, so when you see me in the hallway, we're friends, right? You're like, no,
probably not.
But at the same time, I think when they grow up to be adults, they'll probably
yeah,
that's you.
Yeah,
so good. And if I want to talk about particular songs, we talk about Weird Science with Oingo Boingo, Dead Man's Party for Back to School. Mm-hmm. Fantastic little scene. I love Danny Elfman. And speaking of Danny Elfman, Beetlejuice. What a great soundtrack, right? Yeah. What a great soundtrack. Richard, what do you think are some of the best 80s comedy soundtracks?
Oh, see,
I know I stole all the good ones, man, but
I'm going to say Purple Rain because it's just such a good soundtrack.
Now, it's a funny movie, but I don't think it's intentionally a comedy.
Look, I'm not going to be bound by your bourgeois limitations, man. That soundtrack is so good. That soundtrack is so... No, best... Fast Times at Ridgemont High had a great soundtrack.
Oh my God, that's probably
great soundtrack.
The best short John Hughes films. That's probably the best soundtrack in the 80s.
Very, very rock and roll, hard rock.
Crow had Cameron Crowe had an ear for music, obviously.
Oh my God,
right?
yeah. So
what he went through to make that's a high Never Been Kissed, that movie, both with Drew Barrymore. If you guys are listening and you know. That is what Cameron Crowe actually did.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, it is.
In real life, he went undercover in high school and wrote about all this stuff. So when you watch Fast Times, you're like, you're based on real people. There really was a Spicoli-esque type character.
Is there a particular song in Fast Times at Ridgemont High? Because it's got it. The whole soundtrack is phenomenal.
Anything with Cheap Trick.
All right, okay.
Can't go wrong with Cheap Trick. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What about you, John? You love music?
Yeah, I was going to say, besides the John Hughes films, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, specifically that Cars song, Moving in Stereo. I love
God,
the Cars.
I completely forgot about that song.
The Cars are such like an iconic 80s band.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, the best band from the 80s.
Every single song on that album.
I can't listen to Led Zeppelin 4 without thinking of that poor schmuck with his wallet that he left it.
Oh, yeah. Just pay my wallet. I'm busy, man. He's like watching TV.
I always thought that kid was Henry Winkler's like nephew or something.
If you want to make out with a girl, put on side 4 of Led Zeppelin. Side 1 of Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah. It's a great. Yeah, I mean, it's great.
Oh, and
if you want to make out with me, put that on.
The Blues Brothers soundtrack.
Oh, of course, right?
1980.
We were the Blues Brothers for Halloween.
We were.
Yeah, we were.
I love the moment in Blues Brothers where he, after they do the song, he goes, Sam and Dave.
That's right.
Yeah, this isn't mine.
Yeah.
This is the quality. This is where it comes from. And I kind of love that.
You know what's great about that soundtrack? I've got that soundtrack.
Yeah.
Rawhide is on the soundtrack.
Yes.
They actually put Rawhide on the soundtrack.
Rollin'. What about you, Alex?
The Beetlejuice soundtrack and the Weird Science one, but Beetlejuice in particular because it gave me little surprises. Because the last song, it's the last song is done. It's Cuban. It's a Cuban song, isn't it?
Okay.
I believe you. Jump in the body now. It's not like what? So I was mesmerized watching Winona Ryder dance to this and float in the air. I was like, that just stuck with me as a kid after that movie because I was like, it goes in so many different directions. The soundtrack of that movie, and it's really good. And the soaring, the orchestral stuff that they would do. Sorry, I keep hitting that. But
well, don't mention it. It brings everybody out of it.
Sorry. But yeah, Beetlejuice. And
Beetlejuice is a fantastic choice, man. Great music in 80s comedies. In fact, we're about to talk about our top 5 80s comedies of all time. But first, we're going to ask you what you think. Coming up on Pop Culture Philosophers 80s comedies, right, John?
Indeed. For sure.
You ruined it.
Wow.
Totally tubular.
What were they supposed to say?
Hey guys, Rockin' Robbie here for Pop Culture Philosophers. I want to talk to you real quick about our Patreon page. That's right, Pop Culture Philosophers is on Patreon at patreon.com/PCP. There you can help support Pop Culture Philosophers, the podcast, the YouTube channels, all that jazz. You can unlock exclusive content and join our community there where you will get access to PCP After Hours. That's the podcast we do. After every single podcast, we leave the mics live for a while, and we release it to our Patreon supporters. We also have a newsletter that gets sent out at least once a week written by myself. A special commentary is available on our Patreon page and lots of other nifty, cool benefits. Check it out at patreon.com/PCP because here at Pop Culture Philosophers, we strive to bring a positive, insightful, and entertaining view on our pop culture, and we need your help to do that. So thank you very much.
Welcome back to Pop Culture Philosophers. We're about to get to the top 5. We're talking about 80s comedies. We're talking about our personal favorite top 5 films of 80s comedies. But I think first, Robbie, I think you reached out to the old social medias to ask those guys what they think.
Oh, yeah. You know me. We always like to look out to social media, Twitter, Patreon, Facebook, YouTube, MySpace.
I don't think we're on MySpace.
LiveJournal, all that stuff.
Poor MySpace.
Andrew Carden said 3 Amigos. Ooh,
Jesus Christ.
Great cast.
Jeremy
Slap
Day,
myself.
a fellow PCP Excitable crew member, said Coming to America and the Blues Brothers.
There you go.
Derek Terrell from the Dirty Data Dudes podcast said Beverly Hills Cop. That counts, right? That's in the 80s. I'm like, of course it does.
Yes,
Yeah.
84, wasn't it?
James Donahoe, we all know him, said Stripes, Blues Brothers, and The Burbs. Oh, that's actually, those are nice, James.
Yeah,
they're
good
safe,
choice.
but they're nice. Matt Gibson said Howard the Duck and Weird Science. Not so safe picks, but okay, I can respect that.
Howard the Duck.
Let's not get into that right now.
Give me this person's address.
Danny Cottenham, that's right. Danny C. from back in the Oxygen and Vinyl days, the best DJ in town, said Better Off Dead. Great movie with John Cusack. Finley, good old Mike Finley, said Coming to America and Scrooged.
Oh man,
Scrooge. Those are good picks, man.
That is a great movie.
Andre Wakefield, we wish you a speedy recovery. He says Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. Chris Lowry says Weird Science.
Yep.
Jeremy, hey bro. Cook said The Burbs. Lost Boys. I'm not going to give you Lost Boys, but I'll give you The Burbs. Because if I can't say Lost Boys, neither can you. Jelani said, you know Jelani. Everybody knows Jelani. He's a PCP crew member as well. He said Trading Places and Coming to America. He loves Eddie Murphy, absolutely. Blake Flowers says The Burbs and Weekend at Bernie's. Mike the Voice Matthews says Caddyshack and Better Off Dead. Timothy Warren says The Great Outdoors. Chris Palk says Trading Places. Tim Morgus says Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Debbie Haygood, my sister. At first she said, what about Bob? I reminded her that came out in 1991. Then she said Big and Spaceballs. Jason from ENS and the RCR podcast said Airplane. Thaddeus House Tony, who just kicked my Snorlax out of a gym, said Trading Places, Coming to America, Stripes, and Spaceballs. Lisa Wall says Fast Times at Richmond Highs. Trent Henley says Major League and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh.
Good picks, man. Nobody said those yet. Bo Wolf said The Princess Bride. Nobody said that yet. Nobody mentioned that. Yeah. Chris Brockman said Stir Crazy. Chris Schott said Strange Brew. Ed Walls, my boss, said Airplanes, Caddyshack, Stripes, American Werewolf in London. I'll give you that, but if I can't use it. Spaceballs and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Andre Smith said Harlem Nights. Harlem Nights. That's a good one. Chris Palmer said Better Off Dead. And Corey Lewis says Spaceballs. That's a lot of responses. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
a lot of support for The Burbs.
Yeah, a lot of
The Burbs.
A lot of Burbs, a lot of Coming to America.
Dark. Yeah.
A lot of Better Off Dead.
A lot of Better Off Dead.
Surprisingly, a couple horror films.
Thank you guys for checking us out. Pop Culture Philosophers on Facebook, Twitter at The PCP Show and at The Rockin' Robbie Billups, or at The Rockin' Robbie, actually. And, of course, on Patreon, YouTube, all that jazz. Thanks for checking in. Now it's time, I believe, John, for the meat.
The meat and potatoes of the show. If you're a vegetarian, the tofu and potatoes of the show.
Thank you.
So these are our top 5. So these are our top 5 favorite comedies.
The tempeh and buffalo sauce.
What the
the mashed potatoes.
Is
I'm
there
a vegetarian
Is
as
there
well.
a side with
Gotcha.
that? Okay.
The beans and rice of the show.
What? Even if you're vegetarian, do you still have beans and rice? Do you still have an entree?
Peas?
Peas to your entree?
Cheese. Cheese is always the entree if you're a vegetarian.
Yeah, when I was
That's why
vegetarian
we're
at one
cooler
point in
than
time,
vegans.
I ate a lot of
vegans.
Fuck
damn
vegans.
cheese
They don't
products.
eat cheese.
They're the Ferris Bueller of the non-eating meat world.
We're going to lose all our vegan audience. All 3 of them. So there's our top 5 in reverse order. Again, films that are near and dear to us. Maybe they didn't win an Oscar. Comedies seldom do. But these are the films that we enjoyed the most. And we're going to actually start with Richard. I'm going to go in clockwise. The viewers can't see
All right.
how we're set up. But as I've mentioned before, we all sit in each other's laps. So we're all in a pyramid. Pyramid? If we're in each other's laps, it's not a pyramid. Anyway, after the show, I'll learn what a pyramid is. But start with Richard.
Okay.
Top 5 comedies from the 80s.
Before Richard gets into his thing, I got a late thing from Will Priest. We got to say hello to Will Priest.
Will
You know how
Priest.
it goes. He says, "Coming to America and Ghostbusters."
All right.
Those are safe.
Fuck him. No, I'm kidding.
What about you, Richard?
Will's a good guy.
Richard's like "Coming
He's a
to
piece of
America,
shit.
Ghostbusters."
You interrupted me for that shit.
Actually, let's just skip Richard altogether. Start with Robbie. I have a feeling that Ferris Bueller's Day Off is not on your list.
I have a feeling about that too.
I think it's a pretty good feeling. My number 5 is Blues Brothers. For a variety of reasons. Great car chases, great action, great music, great chemistry. The story never lets up. Like most musicals, it kind of feels like the story comes to a complete halt when they do a musical number. This one actually feels like the story progresses when the music goes on. Great chemistry. Of course, I'm Catholic, so it doesn't hurt. My number 4, it was a toss-up between Porky's and Strange Brew, but Porky's honestly makes me kind of belly laugh a little harder. Strange Brew is the smarter, better movie, but Porky's just straight up gives me that sort of reflexive laugh where I can't hide it. Yeah. And it's
more slapstick comedy.
It's more slapstick. It's just more wonderfully vulgar and disgusting, and it embraces it and it loves it. So I kind of got to go with Porky's. Number 3, Used Cars. It's a little-known Kurt Russell movie directed by Robert Zemeckis. I think it came out in the 80s. Amazing movie. If you haven't seen it, Kurt Russell, the most underrated actor in America today. The guy can do anything. He can do comedy. He can do action. Everybody was impressed when Schwarzenegger went from action to comedy. Kurt Russell went from comedy to action. He was a Disney kid actor, for God's sake. He went from the computer wore tennis shoes to Escape from New York, for God's sakes. He's amazing in Used Cars. If you haven't seen it, check it out. My number 2, Spinal Tap.
Oh,
Come
yeah.
on.
Yeah.
I think Woody Allen did the mockumentary first with Take the Money and Run. I don't know if he did it first, but he was the first one I ever noticed.
Yeah.
But Spinal Tap, I think, is the one that set the template. I think Take the Money and Run, I think, was mostly written. Spinal Tap is mostly improvised.
That's right.
Everything you see in that film is ad-libbed. That's amazing. Spinal Tap's just number 1. When you're talking about 80s comedies, as far as I'm concerned, the be-all and end-all is Airplane.
Oh my God, Airplane is so funny.
It's been ripped off to high heaven, but every single the difference between Airplane and the Imitators is that the Imitators, when they do the Airplane sort of nonstop joke type of parody, all the parodies are dated and it, like a Britney Spears reference that nobody's going to get in 6 months. You watch Airplane, every single joke lands. I didn't mean.
That's funny.
Punch me in the dick, please. I didn't mean to do that.
I'm just going to say, Richard, that out of the entire duration of the show, that was the most well-delivered top 5 ever. Was it not?
It is, and we have a trophy for you under the desk. Here you go.
And it's John's misshapen penis.
It's a very small trophy.
See, I don't even want to follow that now.
Don't worry,
that
you
is
don't
a great
have
top
to.
5. I'm happy that somebody mentioned Airplane. I didn't know if it would make anybody's top 5.
Oh my God!
But Airplane, and even Airplane 2, which I didn't know was a completely different writing crew.
That's an awful movie.
You don't think Airplane 2 is hilarious?
Oh no, it's
That's
terrible.
the space shuttle and William Shatner.
Yes,
It's terrible.
Yes. But I think
it's the new monkeys to the monkeys of.
Well, the people that did Airplane went on to do, and maybe
Top
somebody bring
Secret.
up Top Secret.
Top Secret and Naked Gun.
And one of the greatest posters of all time, which is brought to you by the people that gave you Airplane, not the Wright brothers, what it said in parentheses.
That's
which
funny.
is funny. And Top Secret, I think, is underrated.
Top Secret is a completely underrated movie.
Yo,
Val
hilarious.
Kilmer.
That's a
Val
great
Kilmer,
movie.
yeah.
That's a great movie. When they're speaking Swedish, but all they did was play the sound backwards.
Yeah.
Come on, that's fucking great.
But great top 5, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a
Great
good top 5. Well delivered. Well delivered.
All right,
Alex, I'm curious to hear your top 5 in reverse order. If you can get it down
follow that douche.
to top 5.
Oh, I'm gonna try.
You got a lot to live up to now.
Number 5, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
There you go.
Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, George Carlin. It just, I see it now. It works for me. It just keeps
it's a great
going.
movie.
I'm in the adventure with them. I'm not just a voyeur. I'm kind of rolling along with them. I enjoy that.
If
And
you
they
were in
got-
the
they got
Wild
great
Stallions,
chemistry.
which instrument would you play in the Wild Stallions? If you joined them,
I would play the cowbell.
that's not the answer I expected.
That's nice.
Beetlejuice, because it just surprised me as a kid. Tim Burton movie, probably one of the first Tim Burton movies I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And Michael Keaton, totally unrecognizable.
dude,
Oh
yeah.
my
the makeup
God, what a performance!
and the energy.
Yeah.
So plus it's Gina Davis. I love Gina Davis
Yeah.
and Alec Baldwin, who
Yeah,
does
right.
not.
young Alec Baldwin.
He's
Very young.
He doesn't really. That's not really one of the movies that he's known for, but he's totally in that one.
And Catherine O'Hara.
Yep.
Dude.
That's right, from CCTV.
And
Yeah, like a lot of we talked about SNL, but
SCTV,
Eugene Levy,
Eugene Levy,
like
Joe Flaherty,
Yeah.
John Candy.
That's right.
Martin Short.
yes,
That's right.
I must say.
we could have done a whole
Phenomenal cast.
SCTV part of the podcast.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
then
Ed
nobody would
Grimley.
watch it because most Americans don't even know. That's what I must say. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ed Grimley, man, dude. I was trying to talk to some people about Ed
Count
Grimley the
Floyd.
other day, and everybody was like, "Who?
What?
The dude with the hair?" And he was like, "I must say," and they're like, "What?
The
are
cartoon?
you talking about?" The cartoon, dude.
Count Floyd?
Alex, you just topped Richard.
Come on.
Coming to America, it's Eddie Murphy destroys. He he shows up. He does a myriad of characters. It's just the best. Plus, he had Arsenio Hall is in it.
Yeah.
I loved him
What's
in that.
the burger place called? Is it McDonald's?
McDowell's, wasn't it?
McDowell's. So we have
They have the golden arches. We have the golden arcs.
Golden Ark.
They got the Big Mac. I got the Big Mick.
And it's one of the times the dad from Good Times is in it, and I
Yeah.
wasn't afraid of
You
him.
weren't terrified of it.
Well, you remember my dad. My dad was no one to play around with. And dad and JJ was always, well, anyway.
Seriously, yeah.
Weird
And then he's just as threatening in the Western.
it's
Is he in the West Wing?
Yeah, he's the chief of the general, the chief of
chief of staff.
Yeah,
Okay.
No, not the chief of staff. But
chief of the joint.
Generals. Yeah.
Yes, those guys.
Chief of the joint.
That thing.
Chief of the joints. I'm in charge of all the joints here.
That's what he was in Good Times, I believe.
Weird Science, John Hughes movie.
Yep.
That's number 2. Weird Science.
I think you're on your number 2, right? Yeah,
I believe that's.
Alex is like, I didn't.
See, I kept track of my
number
shit,
2.
Alex.
You're on your number 2, sir. I'm positive you're on your number 2. Weird Science.
Weird Science,
Nice.
which is a John Hughes movie.
Yep.
Written by and directed by John Hughes. And I'm looking at this now, and it never occurred to me, based on Weird Science comic books from EC Comics?
Yeah, and kind of Frankenstein. The name is based on that.
Yeah, I
mean,
think
they
anything
reference
else
Frankenstein in the movie.
He wanted to do a teen comedy, but he wanted to do it like one of those Weird Science Frankenstein type things, and I thought it was super cool.
I'm looking at this, is the pre-code 1950s.
Was there an actual story that he adapted it from?
That
Maybe.
does not say that.
I don't
maybe.
think.
I was just
honestly
a
think
horny
it's only
teenage
the
version
name.
of Frankenstein.
And the title song was written and performed by American New Wave band Oingo Boingo. And my number 1 is Dragnet. It just
wow.
Oh, the
nice.
Dragnet
That
movie.
is
Dan
under the
Aykroyd.
radar.
Dan Aykroyd was such a huge fan of the original show.
And you're Tom Hanks, man.
And Tom Hanks just killing every scene. And we talked about this. Dan Aykroyd has a talent for names.
Yeah.
Coming up with names. Pep Strebeck.
Pep Strebeck. What's Pep short for?
I don't know.
Hello. It's Pepley.
And he just kills in every scene. They did a rap. So
Oh, Jesus Christ.
if
they
you get
did a
on the
rap.
YouTube, Dragnet has a rap that goes with it. And these two guys,
Oh, you
can I
fucking
just
serious? I
say,
remember that.
NWA's got some competition. Because they murder it. And it was a hit. It was a hit.
How
movie.
great is Dabney Coleman with his lisp?
That's right.
Playboy. He's a centerfold.
And he's doing a Southern thing, too.
Yeah.
That's
That's
are
a good
two-
top 5, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
It really
It's a
is.
fantastic 5. Very.
It
Not
was
what
all
I
right. It
expected.
wasn't that good. It was.
Well,
I mean, the delivery was.
I
right.
was
And I lost
surprised that there was some mentions on your top 5 that we haven't talked about at all tonight. Like Dragnet, for example, kind of threw me off.
Yeah, that's an underrated movie.
Yeah, it is, and it's hilarious. And I watched that as a kid, but I'd never seen the Dragnet show at the time. So that was my first introduction to it.
When you go back and watch the show, are you like, oh my God, Dan Aykroyd nailed it?
Dan Aykroyd's
nailed
delivery.
the delivery.
Yes.
There's a really quickly. There's a scene in there where they shave a lion, and then Pep's like, "Oh, well, love, that's weird." He says, "What? Yeah, you think it's weird? You think it's funny that he's got shaved, he's got a mohawk? Well, what do you think those kids? What do you tell the kids that come to the zoo that want to see a lion they've never seen a lion before?" And Tom Hanks takes a beat, turns to the kids, and goes, "It'll grow back." And the kids go, "Yay!" It'll grow back, kids. That's just like, that's great.
What were you, Robbie? I'm curious to hear your top 5.
Well, I'm kind of nervous. My number 5 is from 1986. It stars Mia Sara, Alan Ruck. Matthew Broderick is from John Hughes. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Damn you.
And Richard leaps across the table.
I love that movie, man. And Ferris Bueller is who I wanted to be, is who I strive to be today. He's kind of like the 80s version of Zach Morris, and I always loved Zach Morris. I just love Ferris, man. I love the talking to the cameras.
Because that's a great soundtrack as
It
well.
is a great
Day
soundtrack.
bow bow.
Dude.
I want Twix now for
And
some
John
reason.
Hughes got that song, Oh Yeah, before anybody else. And now every time someone hears that, they think of 80s corporate greed.
Yep.
They think of like wanting money and all that stuff. And I just love that movie so much, man.
Well, this is awkward now.
Yeah, it is. Number 4 is from 1988, written by John Hughes, directed by Howard Deutsch, The Great Outdoors. I loved that movie
Dan
when I was
Aykroyd.
a child. Dan
And John
Aykroyd,
Candy.
John Candy.
That's right.
Loved that movie so much. I thought it was so funny with the raccoons and the
That was a
the
real bear.
Yeah.
It's a real bear
And
jumping
it was
up
really
Is that a
John
real-
Candy's ass.
That's right. Say, is that a real bear's ass? That's John Candy's ass.
But it's really, I just love that. When I was a kid, I thought like, the when they're like, you know what hot dogs are made out of? Just make it out of ass and lips. Like I thought that, and I was like, oh my God, that's so funny.
What if I eating the steak and he says,
Oh my God.
You didn't finish the fat. And it's like,
gristle
oh.
of
There's
the
nothing
fat.
left on that plate but meat and grizzle, like bone and grizzle, fat and grizzle. And he's like, oh. Wait, boy. And then they go home and he's like, look at the size of the maggots on that meat.
Oh,
Because they have to keep the
Those
garbage
fucking
inside.
raccoons.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like John Hughes did Vacation, and
Yeah.
then he did The Great Outdoors, and I love The Great Outdoors. I think it's a superior film. Beetlejuice, number 3,
All right.
1988, Tim Burton, of course, who also did Pee-wee's Big Adventure in the 80s, and another really good film.
Another great 80s movie.
But Beetlejuice just, like, I loved horror films growing up as a kid, especially the old school Universal stuff, so I liked seeing people in makeup and seeing cool ghostly type things.
And practical effects.
Yeah.
Oh, the aesthetic, the set design of that
exactly.
movie is amazing.
And that movie is so good.
Yeah.
And we were talking about greatest villains of 80s comedies.
Yeah.
Fuck Ferris Bueller. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is the villain of his own piece, right? Absolutely.
right.
Michael
That
Keaton
is a good
does
point. Yeah.
such a great job in that role. Winona Ryder, Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin.
Yep.
The dude. What's the fat dude's name?
Oh, he's in tons of stuff.
Yeah, he's in tons of stuff.
Oh, I
he's
blanked out on
he's
his
the
name, but
psychic
yeah.
guy, you know,
Yeah,
and he's
that's
like,
right.
Dale. And Catherine O'Hara. And what's the dude's name?
Jeffrey Jones.
Jeffrey Jones.
That's right.
Which
Good
is
stuff.
a real life villain.
Number 2, 1984, Rob Reiner.
I thought,
This is Spinal Tap.
oh, geez, I thought you were talking about the George Orwell
No,
film.
no.
I'm like, that ain't a fucking comedy. Totalitarianism is hilarious.
No, Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap.
there you
And,
go.
that's
Spinal Tap's
seriously,
such a great
to me, probably the funniest movie from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my favorite 80s comedy,
Oh.
but it is my favorite. I think it's one of the funniest movies from that. Like, you were talking about how it's all, like, just improv and shit.
Yeah.
And there's a whole, like, if you get the Blu-ray or the DVD, there's, like, deleted scenes. That's a whole other movie.
Yeah.
And they do the commentary in character, and
That's
it's so
brilliant,
funny.
yeah.
Michael Shear, Harry
Harry
Shearer,
Shearer.
Michael McKean, and Christopher Guest. Christopher Guest kept doing these type. I love Waiting for Guffman. I love Best in Show. I love Mighty Win. And Spinal Tap's where it starts. And it, like, talk about quotable movies.
Oh, God. I call it Lick My Love Pump.
Yes, right.
The whole 11 thing?
But these go to 11.
Why don't you just make that 10 the top? No, this one goes to 11.
And that's a cultural film. And people say turn it up to 11. They don't even know what they're talking about.
He drowned in someone else's vomit.
Yeah.
You can't, you can't
the
dust
whole
for
idea
vomit.
about the drummers that always die.
Yeah. You can't dust for
No,
vomit.
technically it was someone else's vomit, allegedly.
You know, they make amps now with 11,
Yes,
as
they
an
do.
option. That's, come on.
In IMDb, it's got a score out of 11.
It's
the only one that goes up to 11. I actually I participate in some of the guitar forums because I play guitar poorly, but I play guitar. And somebody put a picture, somebody put a picture on their guitar. His amp goes up to 10, but past 10 is a picture of the girl from Stranger Things. So it goes up to that.
That's funny.
It works on so many levels.
My number 1, John Hughes, Emilio Estevez, Anthony Michael Hall, Molly Ringwald, Judd Nelson.
Is this Top Gun?
Ali Sheedy. Top Gun 2, Electric Boogaloo. No, it's Breakfast Club. I love this movie so much.
Is
you know,
Breakfast Club a comedy, though?
Wait, no, here's the thing. It is a comedy.
It straddles that line between comedy and like
drama. So it's like a dramedy.
Yeah.
But the point of this movie is, it was marketed as a comedy.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
It's really
the
funny.
whole bit with the sandwich.
That's right.
That's comedic.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be in
That's
a
some Charlie
serious
Chaplin
drama.
stuff she
That's
does.
not
Yeah.
in Girl Interrupted.
Yeah.
You know?
We
But,
need to
like,
do that
it's
sandwich
not in
on a
Schindler's
YouTube
List.
video, by the way, for the show.
We should. We actually should. But it is a comedy to me, but it's a comedy that goes a little bit further. So Spinal Tap to me is, I think, the funniest movie of the 80s. But Breakfast Club is my favorite 80s comedy because those characters, everything we talked about earlier, I could go on and on and on, but it's like it breaks down all the stereotypes of the 80s, except for the minority ones. And and it really deals with it in a real way, in a comedic way, and in a way, using the music, it so encapsulates the 80s for me and the experience of the youth. And I love that movie so much.
It's
I think
a great
if they had a
film.
black character in it, I think the audience would just roll their eyes. Oh, here we go. He's gonna talk about
Well, they should remake
what's
it.
not bothering you.
They should remake it. They should remake it. I'm serious. They should remake it, and they should have like a very diverse cast. And I think it would really work as an episodic television series.
And make one of the characters gay. That would be...
Yeah, one of the characters should be gay. There should be maybe a like someone of Middle Eastern descent. There should be obviously a black character.
Yeah.
Oh,
There
we should
be-
have a cat.
Yeah, yeah, and there should be a
in
cat
school?
and maybe a penguin.
Have
What
they
a great
remade-
library that was.
Have they remade any John Hughes
Breakfast
films?
Club.
I don't think they have yet.
No,
No.
And maybe
I
that's for
I
the
think
better.
they know better.
I think the idea with filmmakers is you don't make a John Hughes, you don't remake a John Hughes film. Much like with punk rockers, you don't cover a Devo song. You don't remake a John Hughes
Well,
film.
what is it about a John Hughes
you
movie
don't tug
that
on
would
Superman's
render
cape.
it
It's just
unremakeable? Is it
I
because-
don't think that it is. I
it
just think
because
it's an
they're-
unwritten law, but I don't think it's no. I think you could totally remake all those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I
probably
think they
wouldn't
would
be
be
any good.
better because they wouldn't be trapped by that 80s-ness of it.
yeah,
Right,
you could add
right.
some diversity. You could make the film, but
Yeah.
there's the problem: is that what directors can you think of that can fill the shoes of John Hughes? Really? I mean, who would you want?
I would honestly love to see
it?
Christopher Nolan do it.
God damn it. Or Michael Bay.
The life
he had such a charm.
No,
you
tell me this. You don't want to see a TV series of The Breakfast Club on Netflix.
That would be great.
Executive produced by Wes Anderson.
That's my wet dream. If Wes Anderson's involved, I'm aboard. I'm all aboard. I think he's busy, but that's a great top 5, man. I knew there would be a John Hughes film. I'm surprised there's not more, but it's a great top 5.
I tried to limit myself and save myself for the John Hughes podcast.
And I love the fact that
I love all of his movies except for Pretty in Pink.
Very quickly,
Pretty in Pink bores me. I'm serious as hell.
What did you, since you're a John Hughes fan, what did you think about Dutch?
I like
Dutch is
Dutch.
fucking hilarious.
Really?
I like.
Bless you.
I like Ethan Embry a lot.
Yeah.
We were talking about
Ethan
Grace and
Randall is
Frankie.
how he's credited in that
right?
film.
Ethan Embry's in that
right.
show, and he does a great job. Masters of Horror, if you remember that from Showtime.
Yeah.
He was in the Don Coscarelli bit Incident on and Off Mountain Road.
I love
Great
Ed
performance.
O'Neill in this.
Yeah,
He's in,
Ed O'Neill's great, but Ethan Embry's also great in Empire Records.
He's in That Thing You Do?
That's right.
Yes,
The bass player.
Can't Hardly Wait.
Can't Hardly Wait.
That's right,
So
yeah.
fucking good. And that's his main,
Yeah.
you know.
I like that movie.
And I'm always
Yeah.
surprised that it's,
I also like Curly Sue.
but it's never
Really?
it's never one of those that people mention. 'Cause
Which
I
one,
think it
Dutch?
did so poorly. Yeah, it did so
I think
poorly.
a lot of people don't
cost
realize,
$17
too,
million
that- yeah,
and made $4.6 million.
Well, someone mentioned that tonight, but we didn't mention it
Somebody mentioned Dutch?
because it's not.
it's
an
in
80s
91. It's actually
yeah.
91.
But,
Yeah.
but
it
it's
was
John Hughes.
It was wrote
So-
by John
Right.
Hughes, right? It's not
That's
directed by John Hughes.
It's
correct.
written by him for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's a kind of where he lost the audience. I imagine was the end scene is where you see Ed O'Neill's character shoot a little boy
With a BB
in the genitals with a BB gun. And I think that's where the
Yeah.
audience kind of like, ooh.
Well,
no,
1991 was a different time and not the 80s. What about you, John? What's your top 5?
My top 5.
Yeah, we're not done yet, buddy.
I couldn't think of top 5, so I got a top 50. I couldn't narrow it down.
It's okay if we run a little long. It's
So,
fine.
My number 5, and I'm surprised it was all the way down. Number 5 was a film written by John Hughes, but not directed by John Hughes, with my favorite actor, Mr. Mom. It's got
That's a
Michael
great
Keaton in
movie.
it. It's kind of a fish out of water. You look back at it now, and the idea of like the woman going to work and the guy staying at home doesn't seem so absurd because
it's
a
so
lot of
quaint.
people do that.
Yeah.
It's like science fiction.
But
back
for
then.
somebody that was not a stay-at-home person, he didn't know how to do laundry and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That the roles were reversed. And Michael Keaton does such a good job.
Well,
He's still early on in his career.
That's right.
He's
but
struggling
it's
at first, and then he
hilarious film.
thrives, and he's like conquering it, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really
Well, the fact that they had one person working who could support the whole family, that's a fucking fantasy.
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, exactly. But great film. Again, love Michael Keaton. Number 4, and I'm surprised nobody brought this up, Fletch. Or any of the Fletch films. Fletch or
man.
Fletch Lives.
Yeah.
I love Chevy Chase. I think the Fletch movies are hilarious, really underrated. And obviously he's this reporter that gets kind of always involved in something he shouldn't be involved in. I think they're really funny. The writing's really witty. You can tell that his roots are SNL, and it works for in his favor. Again, really young Chevy Chase here, but it's so funny. I love Fletch. And again, Fletch Lives would be my runner-up if we had it, because can I tie Fletch and Fletch Lives for number 4?
An honorable mention.
I hate when people do honorable
From
mentions.
the guy
though.
that hates honorable mention. My honorable mention is The Burbs.
My number 3 is another Michael Keaton film, Beetlejuice, which showed up on other people's top 5s. I love the visual effect. I think Keaton's funny, but also very dark and disturbing.
That's right.
And really, at the time, I did not know this was the same guy that was from Mr. Mom and Gung Ho. I didn't put two and two
Buried
together.
under makeup.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he does a great job in the film. I think the film overall has got some good dark comedy. It's Tim Burton's funniest film because Tim Burton obviously does more serious stuff. But, this is crosses that line. It's still very dark. It's very much reeks of Tim Burton's style.
I think his funniest film is Planet of the Apes. That's hilarious, too.
I don't think it was supposed to
What's
be.
great about Beetlejuice, he's playing a character. He's not playing himself. He doesn't, show up and deliver the lines in a funny way. He's playing a full-fledged character, and that's always impressive. That's amazing.
Come on, Beetlejuice?
Yeah.
Michael Keaton,
Yeah,
Michael Keaton
Keaton's great in
commits
that
to the role. Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton is phenomenal.
He commits more to that than he does Bruce Wayne.
He does a great. He's still my
Hot
favorite
take.
Batman. He's still my favorite Batman. Everybody else can fuck off.
Hot takes all day.
Number 2.
Christian Bale would kick the shit out of Michael Keaton.
No way, man.
No, because he kills people. Keaton's Batman kills people.
Yeah.
Sticks some dynamite down his
Murder.
pants.
That's
well,
right.
Ben Affleck then. Come on.
Oh, okay.
My number 2 is an independent film you guys never heard of. This is Spinal Tap,
Oh,
which actually made I think several of your lists. So
I think that was
great.
It was
film.
me, you, and Richard had it at number 2.
that's right.
Yeah, we all had it at number 2. It's a great.
None
film.
of us had
It's
the
funny.
balls to put it at number
Yeah,
1.
I love the film. We talked about doing a rock and roll podcast, talking about like rock and roll's influence on films, and unfortunately, the reason we haven't done one is it would be loaded with This is Spinal Tap. Seriously, half
It'd
the
be
film
like
would be about that.
Hard Day's Night, and This is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, and like 5% Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the
but
wall.
we've already talked about it a lot.
And Electric Boogaloo.
That's the second
Break-In 2.
Yeah, Break-In 2. Great film though.
Boogaloo.
And my number 1 film, which I'm surprised nobody made nobody else's list, Ghostbusters. I mean, it's a
I'm
great.
very surprised.
It's
too.
a great cast. I mean, it's a
Except for
sci-fi film that's a comedy, but they're all comedians. I mean, Aykroyd and Bill Murray. It's really funny. It does have scary parts. At least when I was a kid, there was the library scene scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid. But in my defense, I was kind of a pansy-ass child.
You know, one of my favorite moments in that movie is when Bill Murray tries to like take the tablecloth off.
Yeah, and just dumps all this stuff over. So I
the
don't know.
plates are still standing.
Just the way he talks and Dan Aykroyd's characters and just the whole cast is great. Rick Moranis, everybody's great in the film. It's funny. The visuals are great. Even to this day, the visuals actually hold up really well.
They do.
And
He can hear you, Ray. Ugly little spud, isn't he? He can hear you, Ray. I love that line.
cleared your mind. I did try to clear it, but for some reason I could think about as a kid, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He's
Somebody
like,
pointed out that he goes on a date with Sigourney Weaver's character.
Yeah.
And he finds out she's possessed, and then he calls Ray, and then he's like, so they get there, and it's like, so what's up? And he says, oh, she's all right. I put enough Thorazine in her to knock out an elephant. And they're like, what? Why do you have Thorazine? You're on a date. Why do you have Thorazine at all? What?
That's
it's
a
not
good
her
observation.
Thorazine. What were you gonna do with that?
Well, he's Dr. Peter Venkman, so of course you would
but
think
why would
he
you take Thorazine with you?
Come
on a
on,
date?
come on.
But anyway,
That's a good top 5, John.
It is good.
Your number
appreciate
1 is
your approval.
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, man. It's just one of those films that I've loved the Ghostbuster films, and it hits both the levels. It's a good sci-fi film. It's a good comedy. In the cast, again, I don't think the film would be half as good if you had, say, some people from the 80s you never heard of, like Bob.
Yeah, right. Bob.
If it wasn't some SNL
That was a
alumni
hack.
who just like, it's their delivery and it's just so damn funny.
How different would it have been if the original cast had,
John Candy was
Belushi.
meant to be.
Belushi was supposed to be the Bill
I think
Murray
it still
part.
would have been hilarious. I think it would have been great.
John Candy was meant to be the Rick Moranis.
I think I would have still enjoyed
that's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Eddie
So-
Murphy was supposed to be the
Ernie Hudson.
Ernie Hudson
Winston.
character.
I'm very glad it came across the way it did.
It would have been an
great
Eddie
cast.
Murphy movie if Eddie Murphy had been in it because he's such a powerful presence in
Absolutely.
Speaking of a great cast,
Yes.
we've had a great cast here tonight, everybody. I wanted to thank you for being here on the 80s Comedy Pop Culture Philosophers podcast. It wouldn't have been half as bad without you guys.
Although we've lost some diehard Ferris Bueller fans, they're not going to tune in after this.
But not
Apologize
this one.
to the vegans and
They're
the
not
Earth
listening.
Movement.
They're out burning
yeah.
crosses.
we specifically lost our Ferris Bueller vegan fans. Specifically, it's a very small slice.
Yeah,
of the
speaking
audience.
of that, Richard, I appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thanks, man.
Tell us your final thoughts on 80s comedies.
80s comedies, see them, watch them, enjoy them, except for Ferris Bueller. That one you stay away from like the
Jesus.
plague. Avoid it. Also, do yourself a favor, seriously. Underrated film, little known. Check out Used Cars.
Yeah.
Great movie. Love
I
that
haven't
movie.
seen it. I'm going to watch it now.
Watch
I
it.
love Kurt Russell. I don't know how I haven't seen this film.
He plays a sleaze. He's so great at playing a sleaze, and he's a sleazebag in this film.
Well, thank you for being on the show, Richard. Alex.
It's 80s comedies are the comfort food of cinema. You absolutely
Yep.
You can't do yourself any harm by just sitting down and maybe grabbing a collection of the Dragnet and the Ghostbusters, and it's just fun. It's comforting. It's hilarious, surprising, and you'll enjoy yourself.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Me, I say the same thing. It was the decade of excess. Well, we excessively emoted. We excessively feeled. We excessively enjoyed ourselves. That's what these 80 comedies represent to me. I love them. Breakfast Club, watch it. It's seriously one of the greatest. Ferris Bueller is amazing.
No!
Everybody should attempt to be like that guy.
Get him out of here.
What about you, John?
I think, if you haven't seen 80s comedies, I'm sure you've seen some. Go out and explore. There's some great films out there, and some, especially the John Hughes films, hold up very well.
Yeah.
And especially Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
God damn it.
But there's some great films out there. And,
all those John Hughes films were made and set outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off is heralded as one of the best movies ever about the spirit of Chicago sometimes.
Oh.
Really?
Did not know.
Yeah, by me and other people.
I recently saw that house for sale. His Cameron's house, his dad's house.
Yeah, dude, Cameron's a great
expensive.
character.
What
That
if I
poor
told
guy.
you it
You're
was
right,
really
though.
expensive?
Ferris
Cameron's the hero
Ferris
of
really
it.
takes abuse. Like,
Oh.
I relate to Ferris.
You know he's cheating on his
in
girlfriend.
ways.
He's cheating on his girlfriend.
Ferris is not cheating on his girlfriend.
When he jumps
Because
over
Ferris
the hedge
probably,
and he stops and he talks to those
talks
two
to those
girls.
two girls. That's
Motherfucker,
right.
You got a girlfriend.
He absolutely
Keep
does.
moving.
He can't be social. He's a social guy.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. I think Ferris is way too into himself to be that sexual.
He's a narcissist.
So, yeah, interesting.
Fuck him and his
And there's a Ferris Bueller TV show with Jennifer Aniston
Yeah,
as the sister.
shit.
very
That's right.
short-lived.
Very, very short-lived.
Yeah. We appreciate everybody tuning in.
Next episode.
Next episode is going to be
Westerns.
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 That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
I couldn't remember.
Love
I'd
a
like
good
to be on
Western.
there.
It's Westerns. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite cowboy films. We
Yeah.
might even talk about...
We might even talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Great cowboy movie.
In that I'd like to shoot him.
In
might-
the back. In the back.
We might talk about an actor that most people don't know named Clint Eastwood. He may come up in the Western...
Whatever happened to him?
Or the John Wayne.
Or the John Wayne.
Yeah.
Or the Billy Crystal. To be honest.
50% of the episode is just going to be City Slickers and City Slickers
No.
2.
So City Slickers too.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Search for Curly's Gold.
Yes.
Actually, we could talk a lot about Jack Palance because he did other... was
Got
he
an
in
Bonanza.
Was he in Rawhide?
He got an Oscar.
wait,
What
he
show
wouldn't
is he
say.
from?
wouldn't,
Bonanza.
Was he in Bonanza?
He was in Bonanza.
I couldn't remember. I thought it was
Yes.
Rawhide. I couldn't remember.
But he got an Oscar for that.
Wasn't he in both?
I didn't even know he wasn't in Bonanza. Jack
Surely,
Palance?
surely he was.
I think he was in Rawhide.
Maybe I saw Jack
Clint
Palance
Eastwood
once.
wasn't
at-
He was in Shane. He played the villain in Shane.
Maybe
That's
I.
right. He was the bad guy.
I think I saw Jack Palance once in a Bonanza restaurant.
Oh, you know what you're thinking of? You're thinking
Whatever.
of,
Do they see
you're
how
thinking
Bonanza restaurants are around? Those are awesome.
You're thinking of Batman. He was in Batman.
Yeah, that's right.
We both got it confused.
Batman.
My number one.
Westerns next episode. I'm super excited.
I'm excited too.
We're gonna have Justin and Mike, the
Justin?
voice, with us. Yes.
Yes, Goldsmith and Mike, the voice, Matthews, talking about Western films. And if you listen to this show on the website, you can check out a lot more content on our YouTube channel. If you're on the website and you want us to just magically show up on your device, you can actually subscribe on iTunes and Android. iTunes? I think it's iTunes. I think it's plural.
You can subscribe on iTunes and iTunes.
Androids. But yeah, we'll magically show up on your device if you want to subscribe to the show. We get a new show I generally we try to do every 2 weeks if we can.
I'd say on average 3.5.
Yeah, and if you are a subscriber or you're checking out the YouTubes already, come on down to the website and there's a whole lot of more content on there. It's popculturephilosophers.com. Not to be confused with I don't know. I have nothing.
.edu.
I think I've had too many blue moons.
Popculturephilosophers.au because we're in Australia.
EDU, we're an educational site.
What?
We're a college now.
Dun dun dun.
We do appreciate everybody tuning in, and check us out next time. Same 80s comedy channel, same 80s comedy time.
What?
Actually, there's no specific time. We just show up on the website and on your device. There's no rhyme or reason. But we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll... I always say catch you next time, but we can't catch...
You'll catch us.
You catch us. We're like Pokemon. You'll catch us. We're like the plague.